Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, good evening, good night. I hope you guys are having a great day today. I'm the Jack Pilot. Today we're going over Task E, Area of Operation 1, otherwise known as the FOI, the Fundamentals of Instruction. If you're watching this video, you want to know knowledge about the FOIs and pass your CFI check ride. I myself am a CFI. I have my commercial license as well. So we're going to be diving into Task E, the elements of effective teaching in a professional environment. Okay, very easy. All right, we're going to break it down little by little, just so you can understand. So first, we have up aviation instructor responsibilities, right, including helping learners, providing adequate instruction, standards of performance, emphasize the positive, and minimizing learner frustrations. Now, this little acronym, there's this little acronym we could use, right? We call it HEMP-MD, or Flight Instructor Responsibilities, or HEMP-MD, whatever you want to have. All right, so we have help students learn, which breaks it down there. We emphasize the positive, maintaining student interests, right? Give the objective, providing adequate instruction tailored to each student, minimize student frustrations, and determine adequate standards of performance. Okay. Now, helping learners, very easy, right? And by the way, I'm using this PDF on the right here via BINS CFI services up on the top right here. Look at this link, binsflightservices.com/lesson plans has everything regarding the fundamentals of instruction, technical subject areas, everything regarding the CFI check ride. I highly recommend you go check this out because this information right here is free for you to learn as a CFI. So first up, we have helping students learn. This is going to be exactly as it sounds. Help them learn. Help them meet their goals in aviation. Help them meet their goals of getting their private license, their instrument rating, or their commercial, whatever it is, right? We want to always help our students and our learners, right? Then providing adequate instruction. Now, it does not say provide high quality, amazing instruction, all right? The FAA literally said providing adequate instruction. Now, what does this mean? Providing adequate instruction. All right, we break it down by ability for a student to associate risk with situations. They're able to have aeronautical decision-making skills. They're able to have high-order thinking skills regarding a problem. They were to go into a problem and solve like that. And they're also, most importantly, a safe pilot. That's what we want in aviation. We want a safe pilot. All right, so providing adequate instruction, it means basically essentially becoming a safe pilot, right? People forget things. People forget acronyms or whatever it is, right? Providing adequate instruction. You're not going to become some high quality mastermind aviation, God who knows everything about the FAA regulations, right? We're humans, okay? The FAA knows we're humans, so that's why it says adequate. Then we have training to establish standards of performance. Now, you could just break this down to standards of performance. So these standards of performance, right? We want to uphold these performance standards, not just letting things slide and ensure safety. Now, standards of performance, they are there for a reason, right? To help you hone in your skills as a pilot, right? So on steep turns, why am I letting my student go 300 feet on their altitude bust, right? I need to hone it in, right? 300, 250, 200 feet, 100 feet, maybe even 50 feet, even 10 feet, right? Because the better and the more rigorous the training the student is, the more they're going to be able to hone in their skills, right? So the standards of performance is very important. They're there for a reason and help the student pilot develop their skills. Then we have emphasizing the positive. Okay, we always want to have students have their self-esteem be very high, right? We want to make sure they're confident in the cockpit, right? We want to make sure they have a high self-esteem, and we want to make them be motivated, right? That's what we want in aviation. We don't want to demotivate someone, right? Otherwise, that would go back to other FOIs. All right, so emphasize the positive, right? All the time we want to emphasize the positive, never the negative, right? If we're in the flight with my student, I don't want to be continuously berating him about the negative he's doing. Why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? Right? But at the end of the flight, say, hey, you did this really good. Not, yeah, your lazy eights were really bad, but you did a really good job on maintaining altitude here, or Your steep turns here, you rounded out a good heading here, right? It's emphasizing the positive and reassuring the student is what's important. Okay, then we have minimizing learner frustrations. All right, now minimizing learner frustrations. Now this is also what you can break down to minimizing student frustrations. There's another acronym, right? We can use, all right, and it's called MACBAG. Now it's not on here, but in order at least. But I would use it MACKBAG on your ACS right here next to minimizing learner frustrations. I would write that out, MACKBAG, right? Your DP is going to ask you, oh, but you mentioned some learner frustrations. What are some learner frustrations? Oh, then you, the happy dandy new CFI applicant that you already know that because right here, motivate students, approach student as individual, right? Criticize constructively, keep students informed, be consistent, admit errors, and give credit when it's due. Those are all the sayings for MACBAG, okay? And it's all listed on this PDF for you right here, okay? So motivate students. We want to motivate students. That's part of every single aspect of aviation, right? We have approach students as individuals, all right? Some students are gonna they have different personalities, right? They're gonna be different things that you look at a student and say, oh, well, he does better job at this, and not his communication skills may be lacking, right? But overall, in general, you want to approach them as an individual, right? Just the same, right? We want to meet everyone the same, but we want to tailor to their needs, okay? The next step on the MACBAG would be criticizing constructively, okay? When critiquing a student, make sure to give them useful tools for improving performance, right? Criticize constructively. When we're at the end of a flight and we're debriefing in the dispatch room or whatever it is, in a private room, we want to build them up, right? Again, this comes by the whole thing of like, of say, hey, you did this really good. I like that you picked out this heading here, or I like that you called out what you were doing here when we were in the middle of the maneuver, right? You want to consistently build them up. That's what that's what you as a CFI are for that student. All right, next up on the MACBAG, we have K. We have keep students informed. Students who are well informed about their progress are less frustrated, right? Keep students informed. It's exactly as it sounds like. Keep them up to date. Keep them up to date about how they're doing, right? If they just soloed and now you're working on maneuvers and everything, you want to keep them informed of their progress. Say, hey, dude, you're doing really good. You're excelling really fast, better than one of my other students, or you're a little bit lacking in this area. Maybe we should get another flighter in or two, and we'll just hit this again hard, right? So this would be good for you to do, right? So we want to keep them informed of their progress. It gives them a gauge about how well they're doing, and it reaffirms them on flying, right? Because we don't want to demotivate someone to stop flying. Flying is amazing, right? That's why we're here. Then next up on the MACBAG after the K would be the B, right? Be consistent, okay? Enforce consistent standards of flying. Don't use checklists only half time. Insist on standardization, procedures, and maneuvers, etc. Be consistent. All right. The ACS standards or the PTS standards are there for a reason. Okay. Be consistent. You want to hone in your students' skills little by little by little. Right. You don't want to just off the rip give them a standard of, plus or minus 100 feet when they're pre-solo they have no hours. Right. So you want to make sure that they're able to be consistent over time. Right. So develop those standards over time, but make sure you enforce those standards, okay? Don't let things slide, just like we were talking about earlier. Don't let things slide. Then next up, we have admit errors, right? CFIs always make mistakes, right? I make mistakes. The students make a mistake. Instructors make a mistake at other schools. All right, everyone is bound to make mistakes. And it's your job as a CFI and anyone else in aviation, admit when you're wrong. Admit when you made an error, right? The students will realize that this is normal, right? Because even as a young student, pre-solo, say 16 years old, 17 years old, trying to get their private pilot license, they're not really going to want to admit their errors, right? Because they're stubborn teenagers, right? But someone who maybe is, in their mid to late 40s or 50s or whatever it is, right? They're going to be more able to accept those errors because they've had life experience, right? But always admit your errors as a CFI. And then the last thing about it is give credit when it's due, right? When a student performs well, recognize it and give appropriate praise, right? We don't want to berate the students. We want to make them feel good, have them have really good self-esteem, right? And that's what's important in this last thing is what it's trying to say is just make the student have a really good self-esteem and give them the credit when it's due. Hey, dude, you had a really good flight. Honestly, I don't have a lot for you. But today was a really good flight. I hope you keep it up. We'll keep it up. We'll keep at it. We'll keep hammering the standards, and you're doing a great job, right? Give credit when it's due. So that's going to be it for that. That's going to be minimizing learner frustrations. Write that down in your ACS. Then we have flight instructor responsibilities, including supervision and surveillance during training. Oh, wow. Look, it's almost like this PDF has it again right here. All this information is free. Okay? Flight instructor responsibilities. Flight instructor responsibilities right here. So we have ensuring pilot ability, pilot supervision, practical test recommendations, additional training, and endorsements. See and avoid, and pilot proficiency. Now we'll start off with ensuring student pilot ability. Okay? Student pilot ability is going to do basically two things. Okay? Make sure they're able to solo safely and manage risk, right, according to. All right, so but the most important thing is going to be the level of safety and procedures that you have taught the student, right? So ensuring pilot ability when they're pre-solo, right? I talked about this in prior videos, but when you're going up with a student, determining that they're actually able to solo, right? I should be able to say nothing in the plane, and they should do 3, 4, 5 laps in the pattern before I even step in and say anything and say, wow, that was a great pattern. You're ready to solo. Let me get out of the plane. Let me go into the tower and let's get this thing done, right? Ensuring that pilot ability. You want to make sure that they're able to associate risk with things and be safe. The procedures and regulations for that particular airspace or whatever you're doing it in. Then we have pilot supervision. Okay, supervising pilots on solo flights. The best thing for this is going to be Flight Radar 24 or anything that monitors your ADS-B out data for the aircraft. But if your aircraft is equipped with ADS-B out, I recommend looking up on Flight Radar 24, seeing what the student's up to, right? Or even if you have a dispatch frequency, calling up them on the radio and say, hey, November 12345, are you doing okay? How are you doing? Right, checking in on them, right, supervising them on their flights, even if it's a cross-country flight, or whatever it is, or even if it's just a solo lap in the pattern, right, you're still checking in on them regardless. Okay, and we have practical test recommendations, additional training, and endorsements. So endorsing candidates for practical tests, providing training for complex, high-performance other endorsements, and flight reviews, etc. All right, as a CFI, you will need to do endorsements. You will need to do additional training. You will need to do these practical test recommendations. Okay, this right here is a practical test recommendation. All of this, the ACS, this document right here. Okay, I'm helping you guys by doing this, right? But additional training. Once a student's done with their private and they want to get their commercial or instrument training, start building up that time, right? You're bound to do it. Help them out. Maybe get them their complex, right? Get them their high performance. Maybe even get a little bit more proficient in some C aircraft, which is which kind of its own unique thing. Gain that experience, right? Which would be very fun. So then we have the see and avoid, right? Keeping your eyes outside at all times, not all times, but we have the integrated flight instruction, right? The integrated flight instruction where we're looking outside in 10-degree increments, and then we're doing our instrument scan inside the aircraft, looking outside, looking inside. So the see and avoid concept, when we see something, we want to avoid something, right? If we see a tower at 1,000 feet above the ground, and I look and we're on a head course, we're about 2 or 3 miles from it, and say, well, I'm just going to deviate a little bit to the left or right, or I'm going to climb in altitude, and let's get away from that tower. We don't want to hit that tower, right? So the see and avoid concept, especially with aircraft, is going to be very important. And you, as a CFI, need to be bringing this up on the onset of training. Okay, see and avoid concept on the onset of training, on their first 0.1 on the TAC, right? When on their first time, they need to be knowing the see and avoid concept. Then we have pilot proficiency. Now, I wish this more or less would have said teaching proficiency versus currency, but that's okay. So we have pilot proficiency versus currency, right? Proficiency is very different from that currency, okay? Proficiency is going to be very high level of things that you, or how should I word this? Um, Currency is just meeting the standards, okay? And it's just meeting the standards. Let's say for your commercial pilot exam, you only have the minimum time required for here. You have the minimum time required for here, right? But when was the last time you flew at night and did your takeoffs, landings at night, or when was your last night flight, right? Understanding that you need to be proficient at night, okay? Because for nighttime, right, we need our within 90 days, 3 takeoffs and landings, right, to operate as PSC for passengers at night, right? So doing that, if you're 89 days ago, you got current, right? Technically, you are still current. You're within that 90 days, but are you proficient? Okay, you're not going to be proficient because it's been almost 3 months. You haven't flown a little bit. You're not used to tailoring your eyes to the night, right? That's going to be a big difference, especially if a student wants to get further and further down the line of their aviation training from private, instrument, commercial, and CFI, and eventually their ATP onto the airlines, right? Developing their sense of proficiency versus currency inside the cockpit and in their general aviation knowledge is going to be very important. Okay. Next up, we have the flight instructor qualifications and professionalism. Now, I will move on to a little bit of the professionalism stuff, but then I will come back to these physiological obstacles for flight students. Okay, so we have the flight instructor qualifications and professionalism. Now, we can break this down into one acronym: SALAD. It's good, it's green, it's good for you, right? Just like SALAD and professionalism is good for you as a CFI. SALAD is good for you, so is maintaining a good image and everything like that, right? So we have a couple different things. We have sincerity, being straightforward and honest. Be always sincere. Don't be, cunning or lying, whatever it is. Just be honest with your student at all times. Okay, regardless if they had a bad flight, it's time to be honest with your student, right? Say, hey, man, really need to, lock in, basically. It's going to be next one is going to be the acceptance of the student, right? Accept the student for who they are. Okay, treat students with respect. Very simple, right? And it's important in this one. The student also needs to accept accept the instructor, just like the instructor needs to accept the student. Okay, the student needs to accept the instructor, right, via critiquing and assessment, just like the instructor needs to accept the student for who they are, regardless if they have maybe a disability or whatever it is, or they're a little bit, not talkative, right? Making sure we're being nice to them and kind. That's very important. Then our but the next we have our language, right? Use of profanity, right? I mean, you're bound to cuss. Maybe have a little cuss word, here and there. That's just aviation. When your student, drops all flaps at the exact same time and you lose 200 feet of altitude, that's going to be fun, right? But language, keep the profanity to a minimum. Especially if they're younger and the parents don't want to hear that they're all of a sudden their student is cussing now with that they coming back from a flight. Next up, we have the appearance and habits. Okay, this is exactly what it sounds like. Your appearance: be well dressed, collared shirt, tucked in, belt, nice shoes, nice pants, whatever is appropriately dressed would be a very professional look. And lastly, we have demeanor. We want to be calm, thoughtful, disciplined, fair, and reasonable. Okay, we want to have a calm demeanor. We want to have a thoughtful. We want to think about things rationally, but also what's most important, we want to be reasonable. Okay, we want to be reasonable scheduling students, being reasonable about maybe a student isn't doing their studying, but they also only have 3 or 4 hours. You don't expect them to know everything about cumulus clouds or whatever it is, winds and everything like that, right? We want to be reasonable in aviation. Next up, we have the professional development. Okay, now the professional development more or less can tie into the ethics and conduct. Okay, but the professional development is more or less going to be always furthering your knowledge in aviation. Okay, for us as CFIs, right? We are the CFI god compared to um, our student. Our student doesn't know how many hours we have, right? So, but knowing our development structure, so always continuing your knowledge of regulations, right? Always looking at, maybe not always looking at, but freshening up your knowledge of IFR procedures. Even though I'm a CFI, right? Freshening up your knowledge on the effects of density altitude, or different procedures in the aircraft, different procedures somewhere else. Always furthering your knowledge in aviation. And then ethics and conduct. Okay. Now ethics right here. Instructors must behave ethically at all times. Now again, this more or less ties into the qualifications and professionalism, which I talked about, the SALAD acronym. The ethics and conduct more or less is that, okay? So it's a little bit broken out right here. So the sincerity, acceptance of the student, language, appearance, and demeanor. This is going to be on here as well. But on the other PDF, I broke it down a little bit better. So yeah, that's going to be the ethics in conduct and professional development. Now, as I said, I was going to talk about this earlier. The physiological obstacles for flight students, okay? Now, these physiological obstacles for students is going to be tying into this, ensuring pilot ability, okay? Now, when we're inside the aircraft and we're inside, or we're up in the air, let's say 2,000 or 3,000 feet, 4,000 feet, and we're doing steep turns. Well, our student's going to be, he's only at, let's say a few hours of flight time. We're just kind of get him familiar with the aircraft, and all of a sudden, we're pulling, 1.5 to almost 2 Gs, let's say at 45 degrees bank. It's like, 1.5, 1.6 Gs or something like that, 1.4. So it can be very uncomfortable for these students, right? They're going to be getting sick possibly, right? We have air sickness, right? Must be dealt with carefully, potentially be improved with experience, but may also require remedies, ginger pills, etc. Air sickness can always be like motion sickness as well. For motion sickness, some things you could do: have your student look out into the horizon, the furthest thing far away. It'll kind of, so you're not shifting the aircraft around that point, you're just kind of focusing out into the infinity, for the student to mitigate that motion sickness. Then we have the discomfort, right? Airplanes are going to be very noisy, very loud, even on frequency if you're operating at a very high density training operations area. There's going to be a lot of talk on the frequency, right? It might be hard for your instructor to be talking to you in the first place as a student. It's going to be hard even hearing for the CFI in the plane, maybe if a student is very quiet, right? But the student is going to be very discomforted, or is that a word, I guess? But they're going to have a lot of physical discomfort inside the aircraft, okay? It's your job to see, as a CFI, to make sure they're comfortable inside the aircraft. Don't do just a 2-hour flight, off the rip. Make sure, just ease into it, right? Let's do like a 30-minute flight. Let's do a 40-minute flight. Let's do 45 minutes. Oh, okay, then we got that done. Let's do an hour, right? Just build your time little by little, and helping tailor to the student's needs, right? Because that's our job as a CFI as well, tailoring to the student's needs, which is very important. Now, under the risk management section of Task E, we have fulfilling instructor responsibilities. Sounds like we did that. Then we have exhibiting professionalism. Sounds like we talked about that as well. All right, we always want to be professional as instructors. We want to make sure we want to fulfill our instructor responsibilities by doing all these things. So this is going to be Ryan CFI Binder, the binsflightservices.com/lesson plans. This is not sponsored or anything, but great free content you can use to pass your CFI check ride. So I'm the Jack Pilot, guys. I hope you have a great rest of your day. If you enjoyed the video, like, comment, subscribe, comment anything you want. Comment your favorite color. Let me know. If you guys have any questions as well, just let me know in the comments. I'll be happy to answer them. I'll be happy to make another video about something else. And I have Task F should be coming out tomorrow, hopefully. So look for that. Well, this is going to almost complete the FOI task area 1 of operation of the CFI ACS. Then after this, we'll do task F, and then I will move on to the technical subject areas. So in the meantime, I'm the Jack Pilot, guys. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Until then, maintain VFR, frequent proceed.